Retail will sell XRP way too early and get priced out. This is something that has been said about XRP for many, many years now. And a lot of people really think that this is something that's never going to happen, or that, it's all nonsense and it's all noise and it's just all clickbait and it's used for views, this, that, whatever. But what if I told you that it's actually true? Welcome to the channel, everyone. My name is Nick. For those that are new to the channel, hopefully by the end of this video, you do become a subscriber. Today, the price of XRP is about $2. Now, we do know that XRP back in January did hit a high of like $3.40. Now, to a lot of you out there, you might not think that this has priced retail out at all, but this actually, in fact, did price retail out in a big way. And what I mean by that is it actually priced a large percentage of, retail investors out completely of actually owning a big bag of XRP. For an example, if I said, hey, go buy 50,000 XRP right now, how many people would actually be able to afford to buy 50,000 XRP? Now, if we go back to, say for so, the lows of, let's say, 2020, or we go back to the lows of 2022, all through this time frame here, all of a sudden it becomes a little bit more of, a realistic thing to do, buying 50,000 XRP, because you could buy it over time. Now, 50,000 XRP or even 10,000 XRP might seem like a large clip to actually buy. Now, I've stated this many times over that, XRP in a large portion of this space, I mean, even if you look at Bitcoin, has completely priced retail out from owning a large percentage of the supply. It's the same thing that I've stated many times over when it comes to even stocks. Like, for an example, if we look at Nvidia, all right, Nvidia over time has done absolutely insane numbers. I circled this time back here because how many people actually sold Nvidia either on this nice upward move here or on the downtrend and the sell-off of 2008? I'm sure a large portion of retail actually sold during this time because, again, it's all emotions. All right, well, the price is going up, I should sell here. New all-time highs, I should sell. And then all of a sudden things start to crash and they're like, oh, well, I missed out on selling. I should sell now and just get out while, I can. So again, the same thing can be said about XRP today. How many people, throughout the entire timeline of XRP have sold during this time, or, maybe they sold during this little, price move down, or how many people sold back here and never looked back? I mean, the percentage of retail actually holding XRP is slim to none. But what's even crazier about all of this, okay, and the number one thing that I actually want to talk about is the time here. Because time is one of the biggest things that actually shakes retail out. It's not actually price action. Right now, if we think about XRP going all the way back to that all-time high of 2017, 2018, it's been about 2,647 days since that all-time high. 2,647 days, and how much frustration, how many people are just kind of giving up on XRP, making a new all-time high, or even, having a much larger move to the upside. So many people are frustrated with the price action of XRP, and I bring this up because if we go back to Nvidia, right? So Nvidia, from October 7th to where we are at now with this recent high, this was 6,210 days. Now, going off of when this chart completely bottomed out and we started that uptrend, it was 4,383 days. Now, the upside potential here was 48, almost 49,000%, and off the highs that it peaked at on October 7th, or sorry, October 1st of 2007, this was a total move of 15,465%. I bring this up because if we think about XRP today, okay, and we could go off of targets that we have been given by, for an example, Standard Chartered, for an example, if we go to, $12.50, so $12, and let me actually put this in real quick so that we have a complete view of this. So $12.50, that would be a 540% move. To a lot of people, that might seem like, oh, well, that's pretty low. That's not a lot. And I agree. It really isn't a lot, which is why I do think that that's just one of the starting points. Like if we actually think about XRP, being a $100 coin, do I think that XRP could hit $100? I do think that it can. The problem is that how many people actually will be a part of crypto or even be invested into XRP when we get to that point? Probably slim to none. Now, how do we get to those prices? I've made videos along the way, really kind of outlining cross-border payments, tokenization, adoption, things like that. But the main thing that I want to say here is that so many people are in a rush to sell. And if we look at stocks, if you were in a rush to sell Nvidia, for an example, you probably sold during this price move here. Maybe you sold once we got back to the highs because you didn't have conviction in Nvidia long term, or maybe you sold around, this point around here. Either way, from that point on, Nvidia did another like 1300. Oh, or sorry, let me go back to the price range. So from that point on, Nvidia did roughly a 2000% move to the upside again. So if we're thinking about retail and how emotions get the best of us, yeah, I do think that XRP, most people will miss out on the actual value of XRP, aka the utility price and value of XRP. Now, I bring this up because we're now starting to see Ripple put a spotlight on adoption. Okay, and this was the view from Casey Craddock, aka the managing director at Ripple. Crypto adoption is growing across Europe, unlocking new growth opportunities for the region. Ripple is proud to support this new report on the future of digital assets and play a key role in providing digital asset infrastructure for banks and financial institutions to bring that reality to life. Now, the full report, listen, it's a very substantial report. I'm not going to go too far into it, but I will say this. There's a lot of great trends and insights within this report that I think everyone should go and check out. But we have crypto awareness and adoption are at an all-time high in the UK and across Europe. The UK has the highest rate of crypto holders in the region, with 19% of its population saying they hold crypto currently. Now, if we actually look at just, the statement here, we have awareness of crypto assets is at an all-time high, with over 90% of French people saying they are aware of them, and nearly 1 in 2 saying they have plans to invest. Across the European region more broadly, the UK has the highest rate of crypto holders, with 19% of its population saying they hold crypto currently. And what's crazy about, some of these percentages and what we're actually seeing, the spotlight on use cases, how they can utilize the underlying crypto assets is what I'm really focused on, because that's actually a growing trend around all of these reports, is investors not just wanting to hold, but actually utilize these crypto assets, which is, again, spotlighting the use of assets like, for an example, XRP for payments. But it's not just the UK and Europe. If we go back, just to February, we have crypto adoption is 43% faster than mobile phones and 20% faster than the internet. When we think about a lot of tech stocks, and if we think about a lot of like the internet boom stocks as well, they've been going insane over the last, decade or so. And that's because of the adoption of the internet. That's the adoption of tech as well. And if we're thinking about crypto adoption itself, it's not just about Bitcoin, right? It's about the entire space. We continue to see the biggest names out there offering crypto services or wanting to offer crypto services, banks talking about crypto. And we look at like the NFT hype, we look at the meme coin hype. And although, yeah, that has always been a big spotlight from mainstream media, the thing that I'm really looking at is what these institutional players are doing, which is tokenizing, right? BlackRock's tokenizing. We have ETFs now, which will eventually be, tokenized on chain as well, which it's kind of comical to see the ETFs around like crypto, because we know that eventually those ETFs will be on chain, which everything we know it will be, right? Like stocks will be tokenized, real estate will be tokenized, everything around, finance, like trade finance, for an example, will be tokenized as well. So when we think about all of the hype things that have come and gone, that definitely did bring users to the space. And I look at NFTs, I look at meme coins, things like that. Those were like main drivers of retail adoption at that point. Now, the main thing that I'm looking at for retail adoption is the institutional players being the bridge to the retail sector to adopt crypto, which it's kind of wild to look at it like that. But that's exactly what's happening here. You have the big banks starting to offer blockchain based services. I mean, when you have the banks looking at blockchain and tapping into blockchain, that's when you know that you were early. And all you have to do is wait. Even over here, we have insight from niche trend to mainstream movement. 659 million people now use crypto globally, with 15,000 businesses accepting Bitcoin payments. For small businesses, crypto adoption means lower fees, no chargebacks, and global reach. And here we have the Bitcoin Payment Ecosystem Global Market Report 2025. And this really just kind of gives us a breakdown of how Bitcoin payments themselves are growing. Now, do I think that this is great for Bitcoin? Sure. But do I think that this is 10 times bigger for everything else outside of Bitcoin? 100%. Why? Well, because if Bitcoin, in terms of Bitcoin payments, is growing like this, imagine what an actual efficient network like the XRP Ledger or even Hedera or Algorand could see if people start to tap into it. And then all of a sudden you start to see the big picture. But also, even BlackRock did show us a breakdown back in January regarding the adoption of crypto and how it has outpaced, growth for mobile phones and the internet. I mean, this was the time needed to achieve 300 million users. It took crypto 12 years. The internet took 15 years and mobile phones took 21 years. And you know what's crazy? In half that time, we won't just double to 600 million users. We'll probably, triple to 900 million users. And once we hit 1 billion, that's when things start to accelerate very fast. Again, the adoption of crypto is picking up so quick. And I think that it's only getting accelerated by legislation, regulations, and even the adoption from the big banks and institutional players. But again, when we think about all of this, we also look at tokenization, which Ripple is also behind. We already know that, tokenization is projected to grow significantly from 0.6 trillion to 18.9 trillion. All of this is showing us that we are still very early. Right now, I would argue, like when we think about Nvidia, right? Like we think about these stocks, okay? And these stocks have done very well. Now, Nvidia is a company that if you're investing into the stock, you're investing into the performance of the company. So you're looking at their sales, their profits, their revenue, things like that. And that's what's directing the overall chart. Like even when we think about 2022's low to where we just recently hit in terms of that high, a lot happened during that time. You had the release of the, 30 series, the 40 series, and now the 50 series. And not only that, but AI adoption is picking up, which is also demanding a lot of GPU power. So when we think about Nvidia, yeah, obviously the stock is doing very well because of, the growth of the actual underlying, company. But when we think about XRP and when we think about this entire space, these digital assets, it's so hard to predict where they will hit in terms of value because their value is not tied to a company's performance. Their value right now is tied to hype and speculation, but eventually our value will be tied to utility. How valuable is it to use XRP or the XRPL, and how much growth is happening around the XRPL? And then we look at the actual total value locked on the XRPL, and this comes from tokenization, stablecoins, people tapping into DeFi yield, institutions tapping into DeFi yield. When we think about the upside potential here, it is extremely significant. And I do think that people will use, XRP the same way that they utilize a lot of stocks, which is borrowing against it. Because in the real world, a lot of the rich billionaires and, just like the top 1%, I'll just say the top 1%. A lot of them, what they do is they have a massive stock portfolio that they just borrow against. And that's how they actually, are extremely wealthy. They have so much, net worth because they're borrowing against their assets. And in this case, stocks could be that asset. I also think the same is going to go with like XRP. I think that, we are going to either, borrow or lend our XRP, and we're also going to earn XRP, or in this case, you could earn dollars in stablecoins through lending our XRP to liquidity pools or locking it away in liquidity pools, or, there's so many huge passive income opportunities around DeFi that I think will be unlocked through the XRP ledger. Not to mention that, yes, I do think that we will also be able to borrow against our XRP holdings, because we already know that this space is only getting stronger and it's getting less volatile as time goes on. So when we think about, where we are at right now and where retail is, the mindset around retail is they want to sell XRP as fast as possible. The second XRP hits $5 or $10, they are getting out. And I made a post about this actually. I made a post about it back in 2023, and I said the amount of people who will actually get rich off of XRP is so little. Why? It's so simple. Retail is blinded by short-term price action. What percentage will sell at $1, $2, $3, all-time highs? Forget it. Most will already be out. A double-digit XRP will happen. Time is only the question, and the big moves when institutions actually go live are still some time away. Either way, it's such a small percentage of the holders who will reap the rewards. And I do completely agree with this statement even today, because how many people have sold XRP, from these lows down here up to this point? I'm telling you right now, a large portion of holders probably sold. But also, how many are waiting to hit that sell button the second that we hit $5 or $7 or $10 or $12 or $15? And don't get me wrong, I'm not scolding people for selling and taking profits. I'm scolding people for selling their entire bag and getting out as soon as they can. That's the big issue, okay? Because taking profits is one thing, selling your entire position and getting out of this space is another thing. I think that we are presented with such an incredible opportunity right now around the space that I don't think that we should let it go to waste, and I don't think that we should let it go by, because again, we already see the adoption picking up. We see the regulation and legislation side working out for us in our favor, especially when it comes to like Ripple with the SEC. I think now is probably one of the best times to be locked in with crypto, because what's going to be happening over the coming weeks and even months ahead and years as well is so much adoption, not just around retail, but from the institutional side. That's why I think that although some of these reports are great to look into, like this one from Ripple, the major ones that we should be putting a spotlight on are the tokenization reports, because what these reports actually provide us with is a guideline around the institutional adoption side, which we already know from like David Schwartz. That's the key to mass adoption, because the next billion users of crypto will be onboarded by institutional players. So with that being said, I hope that you guys enjoyed this video. If you guys definitely leave a like, subscribe, turn notifications on, because more free content. You guys are more than welcome to follow me on Twitter and join the free Discord in the description below. And with that being said, guys, this has been Nick. Thanks for watching. Peace out.